statistically speaking, this is the largest ever QIP out of India. In fact, this would be the largest ever primary capital raise out of India in almost a decade. Ever since the global financial crisis hit us, this will be the largest ever, and this actually will be the third largest equity raise in the entire APAC, Asia Pac, this year, 2017. In terms of investor demand, I think we kind of touched every single conceivable pocket of demand when it came to SBI's QIP, and which means you have the international long only funds, the domestic institutions, mutual funds, insurance companies, global financial specialist funds. You had sovereign wealth funds, pension money, as well as smart money managers. So it was extremely widespread, not only across categories of investors, but also across geographies.
Debasish, does this mega QIP put to rest any lingering doubts in the markets regarding the fact that whether government-owned banks, would garner enough interest and would attract sufficient investor appetite?
This is a way of investor endorsing all the good things that the management has done over the last 2 to 3 years. So that's a standalone case.
Sure.
But it's good news because this is the nation's largest bank. 15,000 crores is not a small amount of money. It got done at a flat to market, so it should excite or rather infuse a lot of confidence and enthusiasm in other state-owned banks in their capital raising plans. But I think when it comes to investors, I think investors don't put all the state-owned banks in the same basket. They will be picky and choosy within that particular space. So I think some of the larger banks within that complex will continue to benefit out of SBI's run. I'm not sure about some of the medium-sized and smaller banks.
In fact, your answer leads into my next question, which is, do you believe an issue of the magnitude or size of SBI will provide that much-needed booster shot of sorts to the QIP instrument route? It's not really been on a high growth trajectory since 2014, 2015, but now suddenly there's so much of attention, so many banks are looking at it. What kind of a trickle-down effect do you think the SBI QIP will have on the QIP route as a whole?
Yeah, I don't think it's a route which is in question. I think QIP over the year, I think over the last 10 years, have come to be established as the most efficient route for Indian corporates and banks institutions to raise capital. The problem was not many Indian companies and banks were coming forward and raising primary capital. I think most part of Indian primary activity has been biased towards secondary offerings, and secondary sell downs, the government divestments, even some of the IPOs were in a way sell down by the promoters or the private equity. So after a long period of time, actually we're seeing a real primary capital raising activity come back to the market, which certainly helps because QIP is the most efficient instrument, and it's, as expected, it's led by banks, and I'm sure it will percolate down to the other broader Indian industry. I think we've seen certain pockets, like a Hindalco raised as a commodity player. We will see, I think, some other players apart from financial services sector come back and raise primary capital to the market.
Which other sectors are you foreseeing QIP activity? If you look at data over the last decade or so, most of the big bank QIPs have come from the banking and financial services sector. We now have SBI. We had a few private sector banks who have enabling resolutions. But over and above banks, are there any other sectors where you're seeing a QIP demand?
It's mostly driven by banks. I think you mentioned all the three banks. I think SBI, yes, as well as Kotak, the three bank ones. I think we're on all three, which got priced this year. But moving away from banks, I think we're seeing certain selective pockets of maybe some of the commodity players, some of the utility players, selective healthcare players, exploring options of raising capital through the QIP route.
What we hear from the ministry is that the government does have plans to merge some of the smaller banks, like say an Allahabad Bank, a UCO Bank, a United Bank of India. But they are saying that that merger could be a possibility only if some of the bigger players, like for example, the likes of PNB, BOI, Bank of Baroda, do not show interest. So clearly the government is now, pushing towards the much needed permutations and combinations which are likely. Do you believe PSU mergers will help to gradually dilute the stress in the banking system, or do you think it will just perhaps add a lot of bad assets to the healthier banks?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty moot question, and I'm sure everyone has been talking about this potential consolidation, predominantly in the state-owned bank space, and NPA being one of the biggest drivers. But I think NPA apart, I think let's take the NPA out of the equation for the time being. Even on a standalone case, I think there is a case to be made that the sector needs consolidation, because what consolidation does is, in a way, bring in scale efficiencies, cost efficiencies, There are certain good practices which are prevalent in certain larger banks. The smaller banks which merge into the bigger banks become beneficiary of those. There is human resources rationalizations, technological rationalizations, branch distribution rationalization. There are a lot of positives to be taken out of a consolidation. So there is a fundamental case to be made for consolidation.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.